I've been asked for years to watch the Star Wars Clone Wars animated TV series, and I never had, and I feel like that kind of speaks to the relationship that I've had with the prequels, which is loved them as a kid, adored them as a kid. I did go through that period where they were fun to make fun of. I would even say there was a time where I just flat out didn't like them and didn't feel like they were particularly good Star Wars, and really over the last 4 or 5 years, my opinion of them has kind of come full circle. I appreciate them and respect them more than I ever have. Revenge of the Sith, I just think, is like one of the best Star Wars movies. I think that movie rules. And I respect Lucas's vision. And I would say at this point, yeah, it's kind of weird. I feel closer to how I felt when I was a kid, where I do like those movies. I've seen them a million times. I can still watch them, flaws and all. I enjoy them. So I decided, hey, you know what? Let's give it a shot. Let's watch 7 seasons of Star Wars. The animated Clone Wars show, which people have raved about and recommended to me. I've now seen it, and let's talk about it. The first thing that people would tell me when talking about this series is that the first 2 seasons are pretty lame. Correct. That's as advertised. I guess they're not bad, like they're not cringe-inducing, terrible. I viewed them more so as kind of what I expected the show to be, which is it's a show made for kids, like little kids. It's a cartoon show that was on Cartoon Network. So I watched the first 2 seasons and I'm like, nothing about this is terrible. You know, like Book of Boba Fett to me was totally lame and bad. You know, there's a lot of bad Star Wars out there. I didn't view this as like something that was hideous. It just wasn't for me. It is in season 3 when things start to take kind of a noticeable turn. And I guess ultimately, and I don't want to go season by season here, ultimately my opinion of this show is that a lot of it I did find very boring. And there's a lot of arcs that I could have done without, and there's entire stretches, you know, of seasons that I just feel are completely forgettable. But there's a specific lane, and when the series deals in that lane, it is brilliant. It's some of the best Star Wars you're going to see. And that lane is anything that involves the evolution of the Force or expansion of Jedi and Sith lore. All of that stuff I think is amazing. There is another part of this series that surprisingly worked very well for me. And it's a lot of the stuff that they do with the actual clones. I did not expect that because, like, one of the complaints about the prequels when they came out, I don't know if people stand by this today, was the fact that, like, the clones, which in the original series, it's the stormtroopers, like, they don't have any personality, right? They are literally just copies of the same person. Here, they actually give them some depth and the dimension. Like, one of the main characters in the show, not to spoil anything, like, is a clone. Like, Captain Rex is a major piece of this series. I actually appreciated that, but there's an arc in season 3 that takes place on Mortis. And that's where I got the impression that this was really where Dave Filoni thrived as a creative voice. It's the fact that for so long, we had this idea of light side of the Force, dark side of the Force. And there's the good guys and there's the bad guys. And I think that this series, and the prequels really as a whole, but especially in this series, does a great job of saying, you know what, there's a lot more gray area to the Force, and there's a lot more gray area to the Jedi than people let on. And I think back, you know, when the prequels first came out, one of the big complaints that people had was the Jedi characters are kind of lame, and they're incredibly stupid. Like, how did they not know that this huge, like, galaxy-changing plan was being pulled off from, you know, right under their noses? And this series does a really, like, goes deeper than I expected to, really, and does a remarkable job of acknowledging, like, the Jedi kind of suck. The Jedi are very arrogant. The Jedi are hypocrites, and they'll turn on their own very easily, and they assume things that aren't there, and that is very fascinating. And I think that, you know, the character that is kind of encapsulates a lot of that confusion involving the path of the Jedi is Ahsoka, who by the end of the series becomes one of the better characters in Star Wars. I mean, she really grows. In the beginning, she's annoying as shit at the very beginning. I mean, she's quintessential comedic relief sidekick who really grows and matures as the series grows and matures. And I would argue, if the prequels themselves are Anakin's story, or the Skywalker saga as a whole is Anakin's story, this series, I think, is more Ahsoka's journey than anything. I think it kind of begins and ends with her. Can't believe I've gone this far in the video without mentioning it, but Darth Maul in this series. You know, I remember back in the day hearing that they brought Darth Maul back, you know, after being killed in in Phantom Menace. And I remember thinking, okay, that's kind of cheap. Like, you're going to retcon a death. Let's see. Guys, Darth Maul is so cool in this. And it reminded me a little bit of how I felt watching Darth Maul when I was like 4 or 5 years old, which is that Darth Maul's scary. His introduction in this series, I think, is legitimately creepy. He's got those spider legs, and you got the great voice work by Sam Witwer, where he just has this very calming influence, like, throughout the series, but at the same time, like, you're almost terrified. It's almost like the Joker, where it's like, okay, this guy, like, he seems in control, but at any second, this dude could fly off the handle and go crazy. And man, I really think, as much as I have come around on the prequels as a whole, I made such a mistake not giving him more of a character in those movies. Because you see, like, you watch this, you're like, man, if they could have taken this character and put him in those movies and given him more dimension, they could have really had something in terms of, like, an antagonist that was equal to what Vader was in the original series. So there's stuff throughout that I really like. I gotta say, it ends on a remarkable note. The final 4 episodes, the final arc, everyone is raving about it. All of those people were correct. I think it is genius storytelling, and it reminded me of one of the things I like about Rogue One, and that I would assume I'd like about Andor, is the fact that you take this supplemental material and you intertwine it with stories that we already know. The last 4 episodes of this series, again, not to give away too much, but it takes place during Revenge of the Sith. And what I came away from while watching it is, 1, it's a great end to the series, but 2, everything that involves Revenge of the Sith, everything Revenge of the Sith touches is just kind of gold. Like, Revenge of the Sith is, to Star Wars, I think what the Black Suit Symbiote saga is to Spider-Man, where it's just that one period in lore. It's that one arc where things divert, where things go from happy, joyful, sci-fi optimism to dark. I mean, this series is a tragedy, and I gotta respect it. I felt this way about Lucas back in 2005 when Sith came out, and I feel this way about the series having watched it now. Like, it doesn't pull any punches. For a show that, in the first season has a episode where 2 droids are basically, like, bumping chests with each other in a fight, it ends with people dying. I mean, it gets as close to the edge as a PG-rated show could possibly get. There are decapitations. Now, you don't see it, and you don't see blood, but, like, by the time Maul comes in and he starts hauling ass, or I guess in this case, mauling ass, it gets really dark and deep, and I really did respect that. So, do I recommend the series? Ask me which episodes to watch, and I'll recommend those to you, because I think that there is still way too much politics, man. I mean, it's a lot of Star Warsing, and they try and try and try, and they just never make those politics fucking interesting in any of these movies or in any of these shows. Just get me to the action, get me to lightsabers, get me to the character stuff. It's a lot of politicking. And a lot of, hey, here's the mission, okay, we achieved the mission, let's go on to the next arc. And a lot of divergence, where you're onto something that's really cool, and then you get 5 episodes that completely tells a different story, and then you go back to the cool stuff, in the middle of a season. It does become a little bit frustrating, but the stuff here that's great, the highs are too high for me not to recommend at least certain arcs of the series. And I am glad the show exists. One more thing I felt watching this. It made me like the sequel trilogy less. Now, I'm already not a big fan of the sequel trilogy, but I guess while watching this, I realized, man, there's so much lore here. And whether you like the prequels or not, it's canon. It's an established part of Star Wars. You can't erase it. You can't undo it. Okay, unless somebody were to decide to remake Star Wars, it's not going to happen. And so you have so much that they could have built off of. And they built off of none of that. They chose to do their own thing, which would be okay if their own thing didn't fucking suck. And so I do understand, and I really think that's a big reason why there are these prequel defenders today. And I think Disney was really blindsided by how many defenders there are of the prequels, is that I think that this show really developed kind of an underground following, which as underground as you could get for something as big as Star Wars. And they developed this attachment to the lore and all the different universes and all the different worlds. And then you have this sequel trilogy, which utilized almost none of that. I mean, Force Awakens, there is one, which I like, there is one reference to to a clone army. Besides that, there are no references to the prequel films other than just the imagery, you know, Darth Vader's mask, stuff like that. Besides that, no, there's nothing. I think they made a mistake with that, because I think that this series, much like comic books, provided a lot of unique source material that could have been adapted or built upon. You know, when you look at the best Spider-Man movie or the best Batman movie, they aren't direct adaptations of the comic series, but what they do is they take the best pieces from the comics, or try to, and they adapt them into a film or a film trilogy. I felt like the sequels could have done a better job of that, and they didn't. And because of that, it still makes me kind of soured towards Star Wars, but I think the original trilogy is and will always be the gold standard for Star Wars. It's an amazing series. I grew up on it. I will say, I think that there is more going on in the prequel era. And because of that, I could understand somebody saying that in terms of expansion of the lore, which that's a term I keep overusing, I could understand somebody saying that the prequel era is their favorite era. Because to me, the original trilogy, that's just 3 great movies, right? What you get after that is a lot more world building. And if that's the stuff that you love and find interesting, more power to you. So, yeah, that's 11 minutes of me talking about Star Wars. I think I'm Star Wars'd out for a while. But, good series, everybody. May the Force be with you.